Good morning. Today is April 27th, Monday, and it's the beginning of a new week. So I hope you're ready to get back to work and um, ready for a good week. We're supposed to have really nice weather this week, so hope you get to get out and enjoy it also. Okay, so today we're starting our new week with, how does weather affect us? That's what our essential question is this week. But before we get into that, let's look at um, for grammar. We'll be talking about adjectives, and we've talked about adjectives before. How adjectives um, describe things. This week, the adjectives we're going to think about are adjectives that compare. That compares is a descriptive adjective. So you can use adjectives to compare two or more nouns. So you add er to an adjective to compare two nouns. Like, my dog is browner than her dog, or my dog is faster than her dog. So I'm comparing my dog to her dog. I'm comparing two things. And then you add est to an adjective to compare more than two nouns. So my dog is the fastest of all the dogs in the neighborhood. So I'm comparing my dog to all the dogs in the neighborhood, to more than just two. So when you're comparing two things, you add er to your adjective. When you're comparing more than two things, you add est to your adjectives. So on this page, and you do have this paper that you're going to do today, you're going to circle the correct adjectives for each sentence. So this pumpkin is bigger than the one I grew last year, or this pumpkin is biggest than the one I grew last year. So it would be bigger because you're comparing last year's pumpkin to this year's pumpkin. You're only comparing two things. Okay, does that make sense, I hope? Okay, so that's our grammar piece today. And spelling, let's see if I've got the right paper. Okay, so for spelling, we're doing consonants plus LE words. And it looks like this. So spelling, consonant plus LE syllables. So able. So all of these words have the LE syllable or EL. Some of them have EL at the end of the word. They all say the ol sound at the end of the word. So able, purple, riddle, handle, eagle, puzzle, castle, little, pickle, towel, nickel, camel, travel, tunnel, and squirrel. Okay, so on this paper, you're going to write the missing letters to make each spelling word complete, and then write the spelling word on the line. So you're going to fill in the missing letters here, and then you're going to rewrite the word out here. Okay? All right, so let's go back to our reading lesson. So the essential question is, how can weather affect us? Weather affects us, and it does. It affects our everyday life, doesn't it? So let's look at different ways that weather can affect it. Do these kids look like they're enjoying the rain? Yep, it does, doesn't it? Looks like a lot of fun. Whoops, I went too far. Okay, so go back. There we go. Okay, so let's listen to our unit opener.
Weather. How can weather affect us? The weather affects what we do, how we dress, and whether or not we decide to go outside. Some people love the rain, and the clothes they wear keep them dry even while splashing around in puddles. It's not raining where Jason lives, but he still needs to keep his head covered. This wide-brimmed hat protects him from the sun and heat. School is closed today thanks to the snow, and Jack and Anna are enjoying their day off. But sometimes the weather isn't fun at all. It's hard to have a picnic in the rain. It can be disappointing when we have to change our plans because of the weather. How does the weather affect you?
Okay, so here's some pictures of of some of the ways that weather can affect us. So let's read and see what it says. So it says, a heavy snow can make getting in and out of our homes more difficult. Lydia is using a snow shovel to shovel the snow from the steps of her house. And I think we have all experienced that. We live here in an area where we usually get lots of snow. We didn't get so much this year, but we usually get lots of snow, and it affects us, and we have to get out and move it so that we can get around, doesn't it? Okay, and this one says, heavy snows covers the roads. This snowplow is clearing the road so that cars will be able to drive down it. So I think we've all seen things like this. We've had snow days because the roads are so bad with snow on them sometimes. Okay, and it says, Darcy is using a fan to help her keep cool on a hot day. And when the weather changes, leaves fall off trees. A rake is one tool people use to pull leaves off the grass and into piles. So that happens in the fall, doesn't it? All right. Those are all different ways that weather can affect us. Okay, so this is a story of about Benjamin Franklin and him being a neighbor. So I want you to listen to this passage, Joshua's odd neighbor, as a read aloud. So this week we're supposed to make predictions. So looking at these pictures, kind of make a prediction about what you think, what makes Joshua's neighbor odd. It says Joshua's odd neighbor. So let's listen to this story.
Joshua's odd neighbor. Joshua sat in the window seat of the third floor of his house. It was his favorite place to read and think. But, he had to admit, it was also the perfect place to spy on his rather odd neighbor, Mr. Benjamin Franklin. Joshua knew this wasn't a nice thing to do, but Mr. Ben Franklin was always up to something, and it was always so interesting. Just then, heavy rain began to pelt the window. Too bad, Joshua thought as he looked up at the dark clouds. I don't suppose my neighbor will be outside in this storm. Suddenly, Joshua saw the back door fly open. Mr. Franklin, along with his son William, ran out onto the lawn. Mr. Franklin was holding a kite. They're going to fly a kite? In this weather? Thought Joshua. He pressed his nose even closer to the window and looked down onto his neighbor's backyard. And that's when Ben Franklin saw the boy. He gave a wave and made a motion for him to open up his window. Hello, Joshua, shouted Ben Franklin above the howl of the wind. Joshua waved back, feeling ashamed that he had been caught spying. Prepare to see history, Mr. Franklin shouted over the rumble of thunder. It is my belief that lightning is no more than electricity. I hope to prove it today when lightning strikes the key on my kite. Joshua saw the kite fly as high as the treetops, trailing a silk tail. Attached to the kite string was a metal key. Suddenly, the sky lit up in a blazing flash of lightning. Mr. Franklin quickly pulled down the kite. When I touch the key, he shouted, I should feel an electric shock. This will prove that lightning is electrical. Joshua was certain that his mouth was hanging open as Mr. Franklin grabbed the key. The man winced and quickly dropped it. It's true! My experiment is a success! Shouted Ben Franklin. Just as quickly as they had run outside, Mr. Franklin and his son ran back into the house. Joshua sat, shaking his head, wondering if he had really just witnessed history as his neighbor had said.
Okay, so I think that would be really interesting to live next door to Benjamin Franklin because he invented many, many things. So think about this, and how did the weather affect Benjamin Franklin? He used it to help him with his experiments. Okay, so let's look at our vocabulary words. So this week, our vocabulary words are argue, astonished, complained, conditions, forbidding, forecast, relief, and stranded. And I have put in a paper of this week's outline, and it's got this week's vocabulary words with their definitions, plus this week's spelling words on there. So look for that paper. So argue. James and his grandfather sometimes discuss movies and argue about them.
Argue. To argue means to express a difference of opinion or disagree.
Astonished. Tammy and Kim were astonished and amazed at the big bug they found.
Astonished. When people are astonished, they are surprised or amazed.
Complained. Ben complained about his dinner because he didn't like peas. Conditions. Mark's umbrella was ruined by the windy conditions.
Conditions. Conditions are the state or circumstances something is in.
This sign is forbidding us to swim in the pond. No swimming by recommendation of the county health department. So forbidding is to not allow. Forecast. The weatherman says that the forecast today is sunny and warm. So forecast is to predict what will be happening or what the weather will be like. Relief. It was a relief that Mom found my dog and he was okay. So relief is to feel good about something that you were worried about earlier. Stranded. Patricia was stranded at home during the rainstorm. So stranded is to be left somewhere. And argue, we're back to argue. Okay, so now this is this week's games. The vocabulary game is a matching game, so you have to match the definition to correct the definition to the correct word. Okay, and then let's see if I can get to that next. Here we go. Okay, and then you're going to be reading The Big Blizzard today. So The Big Blizzard is historical fiction. Remember, the essential question is, how can weather affect us? You're going to read how a blizzard affects the Hernandez family in New York City. So, okay, we talked about making predictions. Making predictions as you're reading, then you kind of predict what you think is going to come next and what's going to happen in the story. And that's what good readers do. As they're reading, they kind of think ahead of the story and see if their predictions are true. And then the theme of the story is the author's message that he gives you. So you think about what the characters do and say, and this kind of helps you figure out what the theme of the story is. Okay, and then historical fiction. We're going to listen to this one.
Historical fiction. The Big Blizzard is historical fiction. Historical fiction is a made-up story that takes place in the past. Has illustrations that show the setting and how people lived, and often helps create a mood. Find text evidence. I can tell that The Big Blizzard is historical fiction. The characters and events are made up. The story is based on real events that happened in 1947 in New York City.
Okay, so that's what makes this story historical fiction, because it is a made-up story that takes place in the past, but it takes place at a time and a place that actually happened. So there really was a big blizzard in New York City in 1947. But the characters and things in this story are made up. And idioms. Remember, we have talked about idioms a lot. So let's listen to what this tells us about idioms.
Idioms. An idiom is a group of words that mean something different from the meaning of each word in it. The phrase, under the weather, is an idiom. It doesn't mean someone is outside in bad weather. It means that someone feels sick. Find text evidence. On page 422, the phrase, stick together, is an idiom. I can use clues in the story to help me figure out that it means to stay close together in a group. Oh, please, take us outside. We can all go to the store together, said Eddie. Okay, said Mama, but we have to stick together and stay close to each other.
So we've talked about idioms a lot over the years, so I feel like you probably do know what idioms mean. So on your questions, I believe there's only 2 questions, or maybe just the idioms that you have to. It'll give you an idiom, and then you kind of have to tell what that idiom means. And that is all of the reading lessons. So I hope you're able to do it. I hope Wonders works for you. You're able to pull up the stories and read. If not, please get a hold of me and let me know, and let's try and fix it. So I'll talk to you later. Have a nice day.